Welcome back to the Nerd Enthusiast Gaming Podcast, where today we have Jerry from DSI joining us. Everybody else had to kind of go. I know if you just watched the other stuff. Jerry stuck around with us because he's a trooper. We're going to talk some games. Jerry, just introduce yourself and where can people find you?
Hi, I'm Jerry. I'm introducing myself. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to Digital Scorpion Interactive on LinkedIn, and I'm there, or you can just find me, Jerry Voorhees, on LinkedIn. And we were talking earlier about people in the industry. If you need help or guidance, I'm happy to help look at resumes. Or one of the biggest things I tell people is if you're looking for a job in the industry, make those connections, because I see people out there without 30 connections on LinkedIn, and that ain't going to cut it. So makes those connections. But yeah, that's me. Hi, I'm Jerry. Oh, and I should say what I do for DSI, right? I'm the chief production officer. So I'm a producer with the studio.
Awesome, man. Wes, where can people follow you at, sir?
Everybody can follow me on Instagram at Grendel5XBX, or if you're ever in the Atlantic City area, in South Jersey, stop by Level Up Entertainment, Hamilton Mall. Let's talk video games. Let's talk comic books. Come on by.
All right, I'm Matt. You guys can follow me on Twitter at FromNJ2CA. I guess it's called X now. I should start saying that at some point. X. Follow me on X, Wes. It's the best. Follow the company at Nerd Enthusiast on all social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channels. Consider supporting us over on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Patreon.com/Nerd Enthusiast. We truly appreciate any support you can provide. All right. So we're going to hop into it. We're going to talk about some games real quick. Jerry, you're our guest. You get to go first. I want to know your favorite console of all time and your top 3 games for it.
Okay. I'm old school. So yeah, Super Nintendo. I grew up with that. Well, was a teenager-ish around that. But Super Nintendo, I love the feel of the controllers back then. And they were simpler and still fit in my hand nice. But yeah, the games, there were a lot of games that I loved to play, but a couple that stick out were A Link to the Past, obviously a classic, one of the best Zelda games in the entire franchise. Simple, cute, fun, easy to play most of the time. And then Chrono Trigger was a lot of fun, just multiple endings and classic soundtrack, all those different kind of things, great characters, different options, things like that. So just a lot of fun. And then Dragon Quest 11, just great characters and things like that. So kind of
nice, short, concise game.
But yeah, 600 hours and you're still playing it, and new content. You get your money's worth, and great characterizations. Like I fell in love with the characters. I felt like I was part of the crew, like they're lovable, and the struggles that they deal with in the storyline and things like that it just pulled me in, and I just suckered it up and loved it. So not a SNES game, but I've got to have a few that are a little more modern, right?
For sure. So let me give you a follow-up. So you if you didn't watch the other videos, Jerry worked on Chrono Trigger, and so you got to play that before basically most of the world did.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know when you started testing that game, because you were a QA tester at the time, did you know like this was going to be like one of your favorite games of all time? Like how long did it take you to figure that out?
I was a huge fan of Final Fantasy 2 and 3, and 3 I think had just come out about the time I was doing that, and I was just in love with Final Fantasy and Squaresoft games. And so when I sat down to play test that game, I was instantly in love with the graphics and the music, and I knew that this was going to be one of my favorite all-time games. We had, and I talked to the people that worked there in the Redmond office. We had no idea it was going to be what it is today. Like we knew it was going to be a classic or a hit, but it's crazy. I have people at my current studio that are just like bowing to me because I worked on Chrono Trigger. And I'm like, all I did was play test it, and I'm like, I play test, but people love that game. And, for obvious reasons, it's very robust, and it came at like the golden age of pixel art for the Super Nintendo. Like it was at the height. And, we talked about bringing out Bahamut Lagoon, and it just didn't quite work with the American audience, but the graphics in that game were great too. but yeah, Chrono Trigger was amazing. And I remember later when we were working on Secret of Evermore, we had cases in the office, cases and cases and cases down the hallways of games. We had Final Fantasy 3 and 2, and at one point Chrono Trigger, and just cases of these, like you would see at GameStop when they open up the boxes, and they're just lining the walls, in the office. You're just walking around, and there's just cases of unopened video games. It was, as a kid, you look at that when you're like in your teens, and you're just like, your jaw drops, right? Because it's like hundreds of dollars in a case, and it was just crazy. But yeah, it was a fun experience, and the game was, I mean, if you haven't played it, go play it.
I
Well, I mean,
loved Chrono Trigger. I mean, Chrono Trigger is so beloved, and it breaks my heart because I got rid of mine. I sold it to a friend who loved Chrono Trigger more than I did, and I was like, you know what? I got a copy here. I'll sell it to you. But now that game is like super crazy expensive to obtain. It makes me sick.
I know. Yeah.
that's what I was thinking. You're in this office with those like boxes and boxes of games. Like those are worth so much money now, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially if they're sealed. Holy cow, man.
Yeah. They paid us a stipend for like, because it was a summer gig for us. The first year, or the first time I was there, it was for a 3-month stint. And I was there 8 to 12 hours a day. Like it was like whoosh, whoosh, slave labor, right? Where they were like, "Well, we give you $100 a week to come on in and help us write these bug reports." It was like child labor or something, But they were paying us in copies of the games too. Like I remember I went home one day, and I had T-shirts and swag, and they're like, "Here, have a couple copies of our games and just give them out to your friends." And they gave me like 3 copies of Final Fantasy 2 still sealed. And then later it was like Chrono Trigger and other ones. Like I'm just going home and handing them out to friends. And I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have hung on to those.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have known then. Like who,
Right.
It's not. I mean, some people did, but it wasn't really common for anybody to keep, especially sealed games back then.
No.
Well,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you actually own a copy of Chrono Trigger now?
Oh yeah. I still have the box for it and everything. Yeah, I've near and dear. Every game that I've ever worked on, I have kept the box if possible, and everything to it. Yeah.
Nice.
Was that copy of Chrono Trigger the same one you had from when you were QA tester?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
the one that I got. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a piece of history. It's so weird though, because a lot of people say, well, like, well, it feels like it was just yesterday, and it does. It's like, what happened to the
That's 'cause we're
last
old.
like, what happened to the last 30 years of my life? They're gone. But it was a very different time back then. We didn't have indie studios. We didn't have any way to digitally download anything.
Mhm.
So it was different when we produced games back then. It was a major studio had to do it. You had first, second, and third party studios, and that was it. And if a crap game came out, I still remember you guys know this. You'd buy a crap game, you'd play it, and you'd be like, "This is a crap game," and you try to take it back to the store, and they're like, "Nope, you opened it. It's yours. This is your turd."
Yep.
and, and the
Yep.
game developers are going,
Yeah.
"Yeah."
Oh man, yeah. There was a very short window of time where you could return a new game, because I remember distinctly I bought Dead to Rights because I was so excited for that title,
Uh-huh.
and I just
Man,
bought into the hype, and I was like, oh, this game looks so good.
it was good.
It was the only game I ever returned in that window, and I got my money. Thank God they had that policy. I was like, this thing sucks. I was like, I bought into the marketing. Like, come on, man. I got my
That game was
50 bucks
good.
back. No, it's not, Wes.
That game was good.
You think Aquaman on Xbox was good?
Oh man.
Dead to Rights was so good. The first one, second one, not so much.
Wes, why don't you go? Why don't you tell me what console and your 3 top games? And it better not be Aquaman or Dead to Rights.
Oh, so for me, man, this was a tough choice. This was a really tough choice. But I kind of narrowed it down, and I think I'm going to have to go with the Dreamcast.
Not a surprise to me. I
I
would assume
I
it was
was
a Dreamcast.
I was torn between the original OG Xbox and the 360. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to give the Dreamcast the edge. And my three games that I picked were Jet Set Radio,
Okay.
Shenmue, and Dead or Alive. Like, I got to have my fighter in there somewhere.
Makes sense.
That was tough. That was, like I said, because like to me, the Xbox was like the Dreamcast 2.
Yeah, it was.
Being a big Sega fanboy, Sega kind of carried over, what was left from the Dreamcast to the Xbox. They had Crazy Taxi, they had Jet Set Radio. Yeah, so it was so good. So, but no, Dreamcast is it for me, man. Those are my three.
Did you guys ever play Typing of the Dead on Dreamcast?
I know exactly what you're talking about, but unfortunately I've never played it.
Never played it, but we've seen it. We've actually talked about it a couple times.
Just killing zombies with a keyboard is all that is.
That's awesome, man.
Of the Dead.
I probably would have been really good at that game. I'm pretty efficient on the keyboard, so I imagine I would have beaten the hell out of that game.
You mentioned Space Channel 5. I recently started playing that again. I was like, I just want to, because I fired up the Dreamcast and I was like, that popped up and I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me go play some Space Channel 5. Ooh
it's
la
great.
la.
The soundtrack.
It was great.
Up, down, left, right, shoot, shoot, shoot. You're just like, I'm in it. And the character designs were so flamboyant. Like the guys in there were like right out of RuPaul's Drag Race. They're just
yes.
fan of the flames and they were loving it. And I remember going to E3 when they were promoting that for Sega. And the Sega had this booth and it was 2 floors. And on the top floor, it was a balcony and they had Ooh La La and the backup dancers up there, and they were up there dancing, and they had the choo choo aliens. I don't know what they were called, but they're out there. They look like the Noid from the old pizza commercials, and they're up there dancing. And of course, there's businessmen from all over the world down there in business suits, like trying to have a business conversation. And you got these like women up there dressed like Ooh La La dancing around. And
I was there. I was there that year. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that.
It was cool, but it was crazy.
When Sega was king.
I mean, I love Sega for sure. They're all great consoles. The reality is this for me: Genesis probably would have been my number 2 because I grew up with a Genesis. I had a Super Nintendo later on, but everybody knows I love the N64. Man, you can say what you want. Does it has a small library? Yes, it does. But the bangers are elite. We're talking Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye, and Super Mario 64. Elite status. First of all, I told the story a million times, so I'm going to just sum it up. Mario 64 was the reason I'm still playing video games today. I would have fallen off of it if it was not for that game, period. GoldenEye was the reason I fell in love with shooters, still like one of my top genres to this day. And Zelda opened me up slightly to RPGs, where I do play some RPGs now, where before that game I never even touched anything. I know most people wouldn't consider it an RPG, but I don't play any hardcore RPGs at all. So it's the closest thing I can get to it is like action RPG. So Zelda kind of fits into that category. And Ocarina of Time, just never seen anything like that. You hop onto Hyrule Field for the first time in like 1996 or 7, whatever the hell year that came out. Man, my mind just melted away. So those are my 3 picks. Banjo-Kazooie, shout out to you. You were on the list, but I couldn't do it. Not with those 3 ahead of you.
Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Conker's fantastic.
Always.
Conker's fantastic. So is Star Fox 64. My God. Get that Rumble Pack in there for the first time.
Yeah.
No, the 64 definitely had some good stuff, man. It definitely had good stuff.
It was one thing I remember seeing a controller for the N64 early on, and I think it was maybe before wasn't there a lag? Like America didn't get the N64 for a while. It came out in Japan first, and then we got it.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So I remember seeing some of the controllers from Japan, and the top like, you know how they're molded, right? You've got the top mold of the plastic for the controller and the bottom one,
Yeah.
and they come out in multiple colors. And the one in Japan that I saw that was released, I think it had like a gray top and a blue bottom, and it blew my mind. It was like, because it was like a different color. And so I remember when they came out, I bought a green, a blue, a yellow, and the gray one I had. And I swapped the tops and bottoms with all of them so that they were all mismatched. And so every
Nice.
controller was like unique. And I just had a couple of guys over from our studio that live here in the Seattle area, from our audio team, and they came in and they were looking through all my old collection, and they pulled out one of my N64 controllers, and he goes, "What is this from?" And I just said, "Oh, I just swapped the covers." And he went, "Oh, that's a great idea. I need to do that." It's just like such a little hack, but it blew his mind too. So anyway, now everyone's going to be trying it to watch as a podcast.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I've moved slightly on there. Retrobit made a really, really good, like, modern N64 controller, and I started using that. And I can still use an N64 controller. Don't get me wrong, but I really think I prefer it. So I've been using that quite a bit when I do go back and play the N64. So it's not quite the same, but it just feels more modern. You know, there's not that weird middle thing. In the,
it's like a fighter jet. You
just
want to like steer it when you hold it.
Exactly.
And which one do you grip? the center, the side?
You always knew if they had like commercials or like any celebrity held the controller, they would always hold it the wrong way. You knew who actually played it and who didn't, man, because you could just tell in 2 seconds, like, that idiot doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, unless they're playing a 2D fighter, which there was like, what, 2 of them probably on the entire console. Like, nobody used that D-pad. No one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny just to watch people like grab a 64 controller for the very first time, and they always grab it on the outside. They always grabbed it on the outside.
Yeah, I remember seeing people actually holding it upside down because they were like, well, the cord goes down, right? They're holding it upside down. I'm like, is that ergonomically correct to you? Okay.
Oh, my God. That's freaking wild.
Just foreign. It's just crazy to some people, you know. And I do remember, you know, seeing that controller, and it was groundbreaking. The shape of it had never been done before, right? And then, you know, we started getting all these crazy handhelds from Nintendo where, you know, we went from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, and then the SP flipped out, you know, and then we had eventually the DS with like the 3D screen and had the little slider, and we're all going blind trying to figure out, is it too much 3D? Can I see it? And do I need to put my glasses on? But I was working at a studio at the time, and I remember we were all excited to see the 3DS. Like, we'd heard it was coming. We were like, how is it 3D without glasses? You don't have, it's 3D. And we finally opened that thing, and as developers, we were just like, our brains were exploding. We're like, oh my God, you know, we're going to make all this really cool stuff. And then we found out what the specs were for it, for a 3D system. And we're like, okay, we can make games for this still. It wasn't as powerful as we'd hoped, but it was a cool platform. But then the shapes of things, you know, now we've got the Switch, and, you know, the Wii had some great stuff with the motion controllers, you know, and people are trying to knock out their ceiling fans, whatever. But the Switch, you know, this is like a long lasting thing. And it's a brilliant, you know, people can make fun of it for being a low powered system, but the thing has lasted through COVID and 7, 8, 9. How long has it been now? Years?
It's going on. This is the 8th year, I think.
Yeah.
It was 2017 when it came out, I want to say.
Wow.
And people can knock Nintendo, but hey, I have fun playing that Switch, and there's a library on that thing. And if the new system is backward compatible, watch out.
I mean, I think Nintendo's bound to screw something up. I mean, I love Nintendo, but if they would just make a proper sequel to the Switch, make it more powerful, I think they're going to do gangbusters. That's all they don't have to change the game, but just based on their history, it's always like, well, we're going to get a pen in there. We're going to, I mean, and not that they're always bad ideas, right? But it's just like, you don't have to do that this time. Just take a step back. Everybody likes what you've done. Don't be innovative for once. Just do what you've done and do it again.
Run out and buy the OLED. It has a bigger screen and it's only $400. You're just like, is that it? Oh, the kickstand was different.
Oh, I didn't care. I bought that OLED, man. I absolutely gave them my money for that. It was, you know, the screen was more was more powerful. Obviously, it looked a lot cleaner, and handheld gaming looks way better, and that
Oh, yeah.
OLED than it does in your big TV. But
But I have
yeah,
to
man,
wonder.
just give us something more powerful and don't change a lot. You can change a little bit, but I don't want some weird gimmick in there. I don't want now you play with a basketball, dribble your Switch around your house. I don't want to do that. I just
Yeah,
want the
stop
Switch.
Steve Jobbings me. Like, I know you've got 5 iterations in the future. Just give me the farthest one in the future now. I don't want to wait. Like, I don't want to buy all the iterations. Just give me the best one now.
Or just make 2 models, right? Make your cheaper model for like your regular consumers, and then like give me a more powerful option. Let me give you $600 for a super powerful Switch, and I will give you $600 for it.
Yeah, but the developers still have to develop around it.
I know. I'm just selfish. I just want what I want.
Yeah, I know. That's yeah. Just developers have to work around all that stuff. And like I was saying, like when we got the 3DS, we were disappointed because it was like so limiting from a development standpoint, but it had this cool new tech. So we're trying to figure out how do we make a fun game with this. And I worked on the 3DS version of Carnival games, and we were like, how do we make these little carnival game stands, because you're walking around, and they're super low poly. They look like PS1 graphics, and
Man.
it was just, ooh, it's 3D, but they look awful. So, and I'm harping on my own work. I'm the one that created the environments for that, but we were so
You had
limited.
to work within the limitations, though.
Yeah, and they turned out great. I mean, they look amazing for what they were for the platform. But I look back at it today and I go, I wouldn't put that on my portfolio. But that was one of the games that ended up in the dollar bin I was talking about earlier.
Oh man,
So it's like, oh, this is a great game, but oh well.
it happens sometimes. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, even good games end up getting clearanced out at some point. I don't know how many great games I had bought for like $20, $10, $5. Like, there's plenty of them out there. We're going to talk about a couple in just a few minutes, or one rather, in just a few minutes.